welcome. We are so happy to see you. And today, um, I just want to announce that I don't know if you had a chance to see this or read it through our newsletter, but we have a new CEO. Our former director of grants, Taylor Jackson, has stepped up to lead our organization as our new CEO. So I just wanted to give her a huge congratulations and a huge shout out. Congratulations, Taylor. Um, and yes, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters. Please let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Agenda. Let's keep going. Yes. Let's keep going. So we will also be sharing this presentation with you all after this meeting, and it will also be available online. We are starting to share all of our presentations now in a page dedicated to this arts community meeting. And I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenters today, Marcy Dallas and Isaac McDonald, who are here to talk to you about Hue Arts in Action. Thank you so much. Welcome, Isaac.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us. I'm actually going to share my screen if that works. Awesome. Can you all see my screen? Great. Well, we're so happy to be here today. My name's Isaac. I'm here with my co-planner, Marcy Dallas. And we're here to present to you all a little bit about an initiative we've been working on called Hue Arts in Action with a broad task force in the community. And for those of you who have attended some of our events before, some of this content may be familiar. So hopefully you won't get bored as we share a little bit about the initiative, but there also will be some new content solicited from a recent town hall. So I will hand it over to Marcy, who's going to talk a little bit about why we're here.
Hi, everybody. Big congrats to Taylor really quickly before we get going. Congrats, Taylor. We're excited. So I'm just going to really briefly tell you, some of you may have seen this information before, but I just want, for the new people who this initiative is new to, I want to make sure that everybody sort of is on even footing before Isaac presents all of the new information that we have. So sort of how we got here, why we're having this discussion, what is this Hue Arts logo? 2 years ago, Houston's 7 cultural districts got together and said, what if we were going to do something together? What kind of initiative would be best for the community, and what kind of thing would make the most sense for us to work on together? And so the cultural districts had a series of focus groups and talked to a variety of people in the community. And what came out of those conversations was that Houston has amazing arts and culture. We have really diverse and interesting arts and culture, but sometimes people don't know about it as well as we think that they should. Those of us who work in arts and culture locally are people who aren't from Houston. And so the vision that was created through those conversations was that Houston should be recognized as the world-renowned arts and culture center that it is, where local residents, artists, and visitors uplift and benefit from the city's unique, diverse arts cultural assets. And so as a result of that vision, the idea was, well, what's the strategy to make sure that that happens? And so there were 2 strategies that were put in place through this visioning exercise that the cultural districts did. One strategy was to champion arts and culture locally, regionally, and federally. And the other strategy is celebrating arts and culture, which is more like a marketing piece. Like, how do we talk about arts and culture? So what we are here to talk about today is the champion arts and culture strategy that we're looking at. The next steps, once we determined that championing arts and culture was something that people wanted, the next sort of action item was to bring Isaac and his team back from TrepWise to help us create an actionable 5-year plan that mobilizes arts and culture around some clear priorities and messaging. And so what we identified that we needed was a coordinated effort to influence public policy. And that turned into this Hue Arts in Action work that we're going to talk about today. So we created this logo with the local artists. We actually did an open call for artists to design the logo for the group. This is the one that's been selected. When you come to our next in-person thing, we'll give you a pen for those of you who haven't gotten one yet. They're pretty cool. So the goal of this group is to create a platform that is broadly supported by the community, with looking at shared policy and funding priorities, growing a network of arts and culture champions in Houston. So talking about advocacy and how you advocate for arts and culture, building capacity for advocacy, and developing partnerships beyond the arts and culture sector. So that looks like a variety of stakeholders in the community, from people who influence public policy directly, to elected officials, to the entities that might make sense for us to partner with, like Visit Houston or Greater Houston Partnership or the county or some entities like that. So we'll talk more about that. But the goal overall is to build power for the sector that creates a well-funded arts and culture sector that's involved in everyday decisions that happen in Houston. Okay, next slide. Isaac. So far, what we've done, sort of most recently on this project, is that we had a virtual kickoff, community kickoff, December 13th. We held a town hall meeting in January. We did an advocacy training webinar in January. We took a bus load of people to Austin last week for Arts Advocacy Day, which was great. If this is all news to you and you haven't heard anything about this initiative, please go to huarts.org and sign up. There's a part on the website that you can sign up for updates so that you can be getting information about upcoming events, and you can be getting updates about the kinds of things that we're working on. The goal for this project is to talk broadly to the community so that we really have an understanding of what the community wants an arts advocacy platform to look like. I'll just make one other note of clarity. The platform that we're looking at creating is not for the city of Houston. It's for Greater Houston. So it's looking at regional funding, it's looking at county funding, and it's looking at city funding on the funding side of things. Isaac will talk a little bit about that. There'll be two different looks at priorities. One will be about funding, and the other one will be about non-funding entities, but that'll come next. We have two events that are coming up that'll be in person, likely in March and April. So be sure and sign up for updates so that you know about those upcoming events.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcy. We got a team. It's not just me and Marcy. We got a government relations team called Conduit, and we're working with Maya Ford from Ford Momentum. And we're also working with an excellent task force. This was another open call, and we have this group of 21 folks that volunteered their time and energies to support this initiative. And so if you know these people, they are pretty plugged into the process, can definitely be a sounding board for you outside of these traditional forums. And we thank them for their time and contributions. Okay, so what are we focused on? Marcy already said this: building ambassadors, getting sustained public and private investment, creating aligned policies, and expanding the arts role in civic decision-making. What are we not doing in this initiative? Creating or revising specific arts programming, supporting individual events or organizations, or really focusing on doing this direct PR advertising, though we have heard a lot about the desire for Houston First and other marketing entities to be one of these partnerships that we build so that they can do better cultural tourism marketing. So that would be part of this program, but we're not directly funding, let's say, a marketing program focused on a particular aspect. What's our strategy? So first we need to assess. We're actually still in the assessment mode. What do we need and want as a collective community? And then what is happening in the political landscape? We're going to share with you what we've heard so far on both of those. And the intersection of those and the opportunities that we see will create a platform. That platform will be an overview of what the Hugh Arts in Action community, which is broadly the arts and culture sector of the city, might advocate for, including funding or changes to rules and regulations. So that's really where we want to get. That platform will inform a set of campaigns or opportunities. So this is when you would say, okay, we might have 6 or 10 different asks in our platform, but near term, there might be an opportunity or a campaign. The example of going to the Capitol was an opportunity, right? Let's use the Texas State Advocacy Day. Let's have an ask, which is for the investments across the state. Let's have a target, which is state legislators, and let's have some messaging. So we'll have opportunities throughout the 1 year and 5 year timeframe. And one more piece here that's important is we're not going to figure out in 2 months everything that could potentially be part of this platform. And that's why it's important to have what we call movement infrastructure. How do you build the base? How do you train ambassadors? And how do you monitor and adapt? You might find that in 2 years, there's a big opportunity or a big threat to the landscape, and you need the ability to make sense of that and turn that into a campaign and opportunity. So that's really how we're thinking about this overarching strategy. I won't get too deep into this, but we are looking at different levels and how you can change things. Very hard to change laws and regulations. A little bit variable in terms of ordinances and rules and how easy those are to change. And then finally, policies. Those are probably the easiest to change. Those are basically internal guidelines from administrations on how to interpret ordinance and rules, and they operate at different levels. And so this is the type of thing that we want to both do our own analysis of and get the broader community familiar with to know where the levers are for change. So at the community launch event in December, we asked people to assign 100 points. I'm actually going to ask this group to also assign 100 points across a different set of categories. But we said, what should we focus on really generally? And what we heard is number one was about protecting existing and securing new funding streams, followed by representation in decision-making bodies, followed by arts education in schools. And so you're going to see on our next set of slides really a focus on these funding streams because we know it's very top of mind right now. But all of these components are likely to be addressed in some way through the platform. Okay, so what have we learned so far about the landscape? Well, we had a great town hall, which I think I'm seeing some familiar names. So for those of you who are at the town hall and here again today, it's great to see you. One of the questions that we asked in that town hall is, what is the needs of the arts and culture community? And we heard a set of universal needs and a set of targeted needs. So universal needs are things like that are shared with the non-arts community: housing, transportation, healthcare, childcare, food access, work stability and skills generally, professional development, networking, good opportunities to work, financial education, and community infrastructure. How do we have good city services, third spaces to gather, safe neighborhoods to be in? Those are things that, whether or not you're an artist, we think there are opportunities to partner with others to make sure these things are available for folks that are part of the arts and culture community. When it comes to targeted needs, we heard about four things: work and financial stability. So we heard a lot about the idea of group purchasing organizations, where there'd be an opportunity for supplies and tools to be collectively managed, health insurance, access to grant writing support, financial literacy resources. This second one was about creative and exhibition spaces. So aside from just places to live, where are the affordable shared workspaces, exhibition, and rehearsal spaces? Third, professional development and networking. We heard a lot about times for this meeting is a great example, right? Times for folks to come together, meet each other, and also education opportunities. How do people know how to do arts admin, budgeting, and management? And where is the repository for that central information? And then finally, visibility and publicity. Marketing for the sector, platforms to showcase work, artists really seeking that opportunity to have their creative expression reach even more people. So that's what we heard in terms of needs. Again, we may not incorporate all of this into our platform. Part of what the process is sorting through these needs to determine what is most relevant given the political landscape. And so I'm going to hand it to Marcy, who's going to talk to us a little bit about what we're seeing in the political landscape.
So I'm just going to go through this quickly so that we can sort of focus on the work that we want to get to today. But just to acknowledge, there are some changes that are happening in the political landscape at the federal, state, and local level that I think is important for us to be aware of as we're looking at, what the platform looks like now. We'll have some short-term goals, some near-term goals, and some longer-term goals. So, administrations change over time, but these are this is the situation that everybody's working in right now. So there was an executive order to revoke a Biden executive order whenever President Trump came into office. And that Biden executive order was all about promoting arts and humanities and museums and library services. As a result of that executive order, one of the outcomes was that the President's Committee on Arts and Culture was eliminated. There was another executive order that was signed ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs, and preferencing was the title of the executive order. A real-time practical implication that had for the arts community is that the National Endowment for the Arts Challenge America grant was eliminated. And instead, the funding that would have gone to Challenge America is going to their general arts programming grants. There's the creation of a department looking at government efficiency, which we're not sure exactly what all of the outcomes are, but some of the things that they'll be looking at will again be sort of like what is considered by this administration as government waste. The Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, issued a directive for a federal funding freeze, which would have included grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. That freeze has since been rescinded, so it's sort of on pause right now, and it's being reviewed currently, so we're not sure what's going to happen with that. And then most recently, yesterday, Donald Trump was established as the chair of the Kennedy Center, looking like the focus of some of the federal arts programming will be really focused on this big anniversary that's coming up celebrating the United States. Next slide, Isaac. So that's sort of some of the things that are happening at the federal level. At the state level, we just started the 89th legislative session. So in Texas, the legislature meets every 2 years. So right now they got started last month. And between January and June, they'll be putting together the budget for the next 2 years for the state. Included in that budget is the Texas Commission on the Arts budget, which is where we get state grants for arts and culture. So the arts platform at the state level this year, and this is what we brought a group of people up to Austin to meet with our legislators about last week, is about protecting municipal and county hotel occupancy tax funds for the arts. So, for example, the Houston Arts Alliance grants that are distributed come from that municipal hotel occupancy tax. So protecting the money that we have in that pool. Protecting and expanding funding for the Texas Commission on the Arts. So this year, Texas Commission on the Arts asked for a $9 million increase in their budget for arts project grants and a $3 million increase in their budget for cultural district project grants. So we went up to advocate for that increase in Texas Commission on the Arts grants. Just as an example, for the arts project grants that TCA gets requests for, they got $84 million in requests for funding for this year, and they had $4 million of funding to distribute. So there was an $80 million gap in what was requested by arts organizations across the state and what they were able to what they were able to support. And then there's a Texas film industry incentive package that's being presented that seems pretty popular at the state level right now, and that is something that the arts community is supporting, particularly focused on making sure that those jobs are Texas jobs that are supported through this film industry initiative. Then at the local level, we also have some changes in the arts and culture landscape with Mayor Whitmire's administration. So Mayor Whitmire created a new city council committee, an arts and culture committee that's been meeting. They have a monthly meeting scheduled. Their job, as described on the website, is to review arts and culture activities of the city of Houston, including MOCA and HAA, and the usage of civic art funds. Over the summer, Houston City Council approved a $10 million decrease in funding for public art over the next 5 years. And just yesterday, Mayor Whitmire's office released a new study, which you can find on the city's website, which is a comprehensive citywide efficiency study, which identified key areas for efficiencies and organizational improvement. And so they're looking holistically at city government and how things can be run more efficiently. I'll tell you what Mayor Whitmire said. If you didn't see the city council meeting on Wednesday, was that yesterday? He said that he's planning to, there's a budget deficit in the city budget, and he's planning to seek additional funding to try and close that gap. But before he goes and seeks that funding, he wants to be able to say to people that the city is running as efficiently as it possibly can. So they're looking at places that maybe there's some duplication or overlap in the city budget, and they haven't released the details of what that's going to look like, but they said that it'll come out whenever the mayor releases his budget proposal for 2026, which should be soon in the spring.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcy. So as you can see, there's some challenging headwinds at multiple levels, but we also think that there are some opportunities. And so we're going to dive into talking about then what do we do with this information about needs, and what do we do with this information about the political landscape? Well, the first thing is to look at the funding strategy for the regional arts ecosystem. So we made this map in our last project at a very high level. It's looking at how does money flow into Houston-based arts and culture workers. So you can see right here in orange are various levels of government. You can see Houston Arts Alliance right there as one of those intermediaries that gets those hot dollars, which you can see in red, and then flows them out into various buckets. We then were looking at sort of philanthropic sources down at the bottom. And then obviously the arts sector generates a lot of dollars from private supporters, right? You sell tickets to things, you sell art. So we really want to think holistically about how do we increase levers in various places here. And in the case that maybe one of the areas gets cut, how do we fight that? And also how do we fill any of those budget gaps from other areas? So we have put together a proposed strategy around funding. This is really in a draft mode, and we're going to have an opportunity for you guys to say 1 to 5 whether you think it's headed in the right direction and give us some feedback. But we really need to think near term, medium term, and long term when it comes to funding for the ecosystem. So near term is about protecting and directing existing funding. Medium term is really about identifying regional partnership opportunities. And then long term is about looking for new dedicated funding streams for the future. So near term, I'm sure you guys in this room are even more familiar with hot dollars than I am, the hotel and occupancy taxes, which are really collected to promote tourism, the convention and hotel industry. HAA is a key recipient and distributor of those. In our surveys so far and in our conversations, one top concern has been fear that the hot tax allocation could be reduced or reallocated. And so one key thing here, which is reflected with the state level policy goals, is about maintaining them as a dedicated funding stream and making sure that they continue to go to support the arts and culture ecosystem. The second piece here is another funding stream for arts, the Civic Art Ordinance, that takes eligible city-funded construction projects and allocates 1.75% of them into public spaces or conserve the city art collection. We know that there's been a request from the City Council to review and revise the City Program Art Ordinance. In this case, our recommendation is to actually use this as an opportunity to partner with the new Arts and Culture Subcommittee and strengthen that ordinance. That might look like expanding eligibility for new types of art. Right now, it's really just physical projects, but you could imagine new types of art, and other cities have done that, including Los Angeles, and also potentially looking at efficiencies in the program. Right now, basically the money, if you build a police headquarters, then that money has to be spent on art in the police headquarters. So we're looking at an opportunity to make that program more efficient. If you know a lot about that program, please contact me or Marcy because we're thinking about it. Okay, medium term. So this, you might have noticed in that chart from before, one of these buckets, county government, we don't really have a big line going to arts and culture. Though they funded individual projects right now, there is not a ton of investment from the county level. And so what we really want to be thinking about is where are the pools of money at a regional or county level that we think could be directed towards the arts. So you can see here the logo of the county commissioners. You can see Hectra, which you may have seen on one of your, in DC, we called them easy passes, but you know, when you drive on the toll roads, the Harris County Toll Road Authority, really one of the best funded toll road authorities in the country. We think there may be opportunities to connect with them, whether it's through investing. Some toll road authorities have implemented small taxes, which they use to invest in their regional arts. Others have put arts on buses. So that's an example of a well-funded government authority that exists at the Harris County level. And then at the regional level, the HGAC, the Houston Galveston Area Council. This is really a regional planning council, and they have a series of different grant opportunities. And so this would be another area where we might see some opportunities for money to be funneled into the arts. Now, all of these are longer, medium-term plays. You need to build relationships, you need to identify opportunities, and then you would need to secure the votes on the relevant advisory or governance councils. But we think county is a big opportunity. You saw like purse strings being tightened at the state level, tensions with the city budget. So we really think county is a place that as a sector, you guys might want to be playing. And then finally, long term, there's a desire to think about dedicated funding stream outside of the ones that you currently have. So some examples in Colorado, there's something called SCFD, the Science and Cultural Facilities District. They teamed up with the Science Division and now had a tax that was on these 7 counties that you can see here that got reinvested into the arts. And then in Ohio, which is a model that we really like to look to in Cuyahoga County, they have used a sin tax on cigarettes to fund arts and culture. And so in both of these cases, they basically created county level intermediaries or regional level intermediaries that got funding mechanisms approved by voters. There are some things that make it a little bit difficult for you all in that there are not referendums, but you can still get things passed at county and regional levels. And we may also be looking at the city level for some type of referendum, because it's possible for the city to have a referendum. So all of that to say, we basically have a near term, a medium term, and a long term horizon. There are other things that we could be thinking about. We want to hear from you, but wanted to give you a sense of currently where the Hugh Arts in Action proposal is. And so I'm actually going to turn it over to you. I just put a link in the chat. You can also scan this QR code. We're not going to spend a ton of time on the results, but I want to see, before we even go into breakouts, first a pulse check. I think this strategy is headed in the right direction, and I'm excited to support it. 1 being, no, I'm not. 5 being, strongly agree. And then also another question as you advance, once you click submit, which will say, do you have any feedback, thoughts, or questions on the funding strategies? Really want to hear each of your voices. Then we'll present one more slide, have one more Mentimeter, and then we'll send you into breakouts. So I'll give like a minute for this response. Okay, awesome. I'm seeing those responses trickle in. If you've responded to that first question, go to the second question. You'll have an opportunity for a little bit more free response. But then pause and don't go to the third and fourth question, because I want to set that one up. All right, once this ticker gets up to maybe 2025, we'll look at the responses. '21 works. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, so we have broadly 4.2. So we have 12 people that were, of the 21, that were at 5, 5 at 4, 2 at 3, and then a couple maybe down here, 1 at 0 or 1. And so we'll hopefully learn a little more in those free responses, but it's good to know that the majority of people thinking that we're headed in the right direction, with definitely some opportunities for suggestions and feedback. Some good questions here. How are we going to protect those funding streams? What's plan B if we lose the hotel tax? Federal cuts make it hard to figure out where we should focus. Totally. How can private, so 2 comments on private support for the arts, both in terms of private equity and then also maybe more donors. So we're not going to respond to these questions right now, unless, Marcy, you want to jump in on some of them. But I think they're exactly the type of things that we wanted to hear from you. And next time we come, we'll have some more answers to them. But I think broadly, if the hotel tax is eliminated, which we're going to fight against, that's why we need these other funding streams functionally, right? That's why we're not just saying, okay, let's try and expand and develop the hot taxes. Okay, so back to our last piece, and then I will let you guys into your breakout rooms. So that's the funding piece, right? And honestly, that's very top of mind for all of us because of some of the threats to funding. But we know that, particularly locally, it may not be that we can go and ask for a lot of money, but we can always ask for other things. And potentially for people that really do want to support the arts, elected officials, business leaders, having some non-funding related asks can really help us build political will and get some near-term wins. And so what is everything else that could be in a platform? So we've heard these 8 things, which I'll talk about in a second. There's really a wide range of ways we could think about the asks in the platform, but we really want to focus about things we can change from a policy perspective, or that, decision makers have the potential to change. So one of them is about creating and preserving affordable art spaces to live and work, which we talked a little bit about in the earlier slides. Ensuring arts instruction in public schools has come up frequently, complicated because of the HISD takeover, but still relevant. An effective regional cultural tourism campaign. So this is about how do we really communicate using Houston First and some other entities, the value of the art and cultural ecosystem here. We heard at the town hall the idea of representation of arts and culture folks in city and regional planning bodies. We've heard about making art downtown, maybe noise ordinances, or the idea of Austin added dedicated parking and loading zones for musicians. That's an example of a limited investment ask that could improve the lives of a subsector of the arts and culture ecosystem. This 5th one is about access and awareness around private sector opportunities. So we know that downtown, there's some folks that are buying up buildings and trying to turn them into entertainment spaces. How do we make that easier, and how do arts and culture folks access that? If there's convention events, how do you reduce barriers to participation there? So that's that category. The 7th one, supporting and empower artists as leaders in disaster recovery efforts. We've heard about in Harvey, the role that many artists played in both helping people process that experience and even delivering real-time supports when people were displaced. How can we build that into a policy response? And then finally, centralized resource hubs. You heard this in the needs assessment, but if there's information about grant writing or about opportunities or about arts administration, how can that be centralized in a place where people can access it, building on the works of folks like Fresh Arts and HAA. So I know that was fast, and you'll have more time to discuss this in your breakouts, but I'm actually going to ask you to do one more Mentimeter. It's that same link, the 3rd question, and there'll be an option, and I'll post this back in the chat. That's that same question. We're going to ask you to allocate 100 points to these 8 things, and there's also an other category. So basically, if you had the time and energy of Hugh Arts, maybe you'd put 40 to an effective regional tourism campaign, 10, 10, 10, and 0 to the rest. Or you'd give 20, 20, 20, 10, 10, 10, 10. We really want to get your perspective here. We're then going to let you in a breakout so you can discuss it a lot further. But this really helps us when we're trying to think about collective desires. So going to give you another minute or two to assign 100 points, and then capture any general reflection, thoughts, or questions that you want to share with us. And then we'll head to breakouts. Well, I know how important the breakouts are, so we're going to look at these responses, but if you haven't submitted yet, feel free to continue to vote. Just want to give you guys a little clue of where everyone else's heads are at for informing your breakout combos. So 2 of the top ones here, creating, preserving affordable art spaces to live and work, and arts and culture representation in city and regional planning bodies. And then instruction in public schools and access and awareness for private sector opportunities for arts and creative. So I would say those 4 really bubbled to the top, all around 15 or more percent. And so that will be something to keep in mind as you all move into your breakout sessions. I'm not going to go look at the free responses right now, but please do share your free responses because we take them seriously. Okay. So that takes us to our breakouts. HAA, do you guys want to talk about these? You want me to present the questions?
Go for it. Maybe we might just go over the rules a little bit, but that will be in the next slide. So go ahead.
Okay, great. So we were just really curious to hear, like, of the various things we've talked about, which ones stand out as being particularly relevant or impactful. What might be an easy win or low-hanging fruit we could advocate for and achieve, even as we work towards these longer-term goals? And then kind of generally, what solutions or asks would you like to see included in a Hugh Arts platform? And another way to think about this is like, what would get you to show up and advocate and be an ambassador if it was reflected in the platform? So I will hand it back to HAA and thank you guys for your time today.
Thank you, Isaac. Uh, Clara, can we get the PowerPoint up again? Thank you. Okay, and let's go ahead and go into the time to network slide. Okay, but I'm gonna give you a little bit, let's just go ahead and get started. We're gonna give you about 20 minutes. You all know how this works, to answer one of those questions that Isaac posed to the group. We'll send them again in the breakout rooms. So answer one of the questions. Remember, it's only one person per group, and remember your group names. So those are the number three things. So you'll have 20 minutes to come up with your questions. Only one person per group gets to speak. If we have time um, after everybody has gone, then we'll take extra questions. But we definitely want to keep it brief so that every group has a chance to speak and we get your questions answered. So questions and one speaker per group. Remember your breakout room name. And so without further ado, Rebecca, let's go ahead and take us into our breakout groups. All right, welcome back, everyone. I think everybody is back. We lost a few folks, but that's okay. Welcome back, welcome back. Okay, so now we are going to share some of the questions or comments that you have in answering this prompts that you were given by our group at Hue Arts in Action. Okay, we're gonna start with the red group. That would be Danielle, Christina, Rebecca, and
Rob, it's
Rurab.
okay.
Rurab.
We
Hi,
haven't
friend.
met yet, but it's good to see you. Ruerob, Rob. Yeah, I'm gonna be speaking on behalf of the Red Group. We're starting off first, which means we're starting off strong. I think in a nutshell, share some of the findings. We really talked about this emphasis on resource sharing and knowledge sharing. This idea of the marginalized, of the most marginalized, tend to still be left out of the picture when thinking about access to funding and additional resources. So expanding our mindset around what does resource sharing look like? How can we reimagine the frameworks around resource sharing? And then where does knowledge-based learning or learning-based environments, where do those sit as we think about this shared space, this shared time, these shared spaces? I'll be plural about that. But that was something that came up with our group. I'm excited to hear what other groups had to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rurab. Up next, we have the white room. That would be Jacinta, Jeanette, and Jill.
I was chosen to speak for everyone. Hello, happy to be here. Thank you for doing this. So, for we decided to have a conversation on what issue stands out the most, and I guess is which I mean I don't know how low of a fruit it is that is hanging, but like, um, it's unfortunate that the hot taxes are being kind of revised, and so I think one of the things that we should prioritize is there's a lot of development happening in the city with developers, and we need to incentivize developers to contribute to arts and culture, meaning that they should really think about creating spaces within their development plan that will bring art that is a multi-use space for arts and culture to happen, and incentivize it in a way where it's creating community within their projects and their communities and their development. Um, and building on that, examples would be like facilitating places for performances to happen, for people to plug in audio spaces, having places where food trucks can come in and post up, and be an amenity to the development that they're already having. And another sector would be really leveraging the parks that we have in Houston. There's a lot of parks like Moody Park that hasn't been really touched, and cared for. So bringing in more not only programming but creating the utilities again for things for these parks and these public spaces to really be utilized, and building on that. And I also echo resource sharing and knowledge-based learning. I mean, I think that's a big, big key. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Yellow group, Amy and Lex.
Lex, you're muted.
Yes, you're muted, Lex.
All right, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things we were discussing was the hotel occupancy tax, and the different ideas coming out of that. I lived in New York for 5 years and I worked with the president of parks. And so I'm very familiar with Trump and his kind of fiscal ways that he handles real estate. And I'm hoping that maybe he'll miss, or Mr. Musk will miss, the hotel occupancy tax for the different cities when he runs the data, because he's a number cruncher, and he will cut budgets where he cuts budgets. And so I think part of that for us is just really, as a community, really brainstorming the different ideas that we could come up to raise funds another way. One suggestion I have is the city has a very large art collection attached to the Greenberg collection of the library for the city of Houston. It has an allocated number of funds to purchase art every single year. I really haven't seen any reports on this, or I don't even know where it's held. But this last fall, they had a 100-year art exhibition at the library downtown where you could see the collection. And I was saying that part of the collection was damaged. It could probably be repaired, but if we needed funding for the arts, a possibility would be to speak to the mayor about selling off a couple of the pieces. They have Rauschenbergs in that collection. One Rauschenberg would probably run for about, at this point, close to like 30 million. Because his collection I just came back from DC. He has an art show at the second level of one of the art galleries there that's sharing an exhibit with Banksy. And so the funding is there. We might have to creatively come up with a different way to tap it, if that makes sense. And I'm sure the city could host an auction if they wanted to. Another thing that was discussed was, making sure that the different organizations that we have real clarity around how they support the artists. And one of the topics she brought up was fresh arts, and just, the clarity of, how specifically we help them. I know their funding's being cut because I was at a meeting with them 2 nights ago, that they had hosting for their volunteers and stuff. And they're losing a lot of money because of what's happening with the funding and the government. So I think money is there, but we have to tap it, like creative financing.
Thank you so much for that insight, Lex. Okay, pink room. We have Anne Park.
Okay, I'm trying to find the unmute button. Two of my partners had to leave early to hop off. So we haven't had all 10 minutes of discussion. But one of the things that we discussed was, Isaac mentioned the tollways, the tolls, and we realize that there are all these advertisements right around the tollways, the highways. And I don't know, that's a revenue stream for the municipal, the Harris County. And in a way, it's some people could consider it like visual pollution because there are so many. And if that's the case, perhaps they should have some allocation for purchase of the art or funding for artists, because every time we have a situation like that, then we have to have some sort of countermeasure. And I don't think that was ever built in when they perceived this idea of building all these highways and expanding it at this point. But that was something that we discussed during our meeting. But I do really agree with other participants. I think those are all great ideas and great insight.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Green group, Joel, Tammy, and Zachary.
Sure. I took notes, so I'll speak for Tammy and Zachary. I don't know if we followed exactly the same format, but I'm just I'm going to try to group the ideas based on sort of these themes. So for the first question, the group felt particularly strong that Harris County funding from Harris County there's an untapped opportunity there. Also, we recognize that historically they've been a source of funding back when it was Catch, right? And it was for artists and small medium arts organizations. So I think as it tries to establish itself as a destination, maybe an opportunity to elevate that story and do that ask. Requests that are not financial was something that resonated with the group, particularly in the areas of art spaces and living spaces. We recognize that, in the past, we used to speak of Houston as an affordable city to live, play, and work. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. If you follow the reports from Houston Housing Authority, there's rising costs, rising rents, which means that artists have to find more creative ways to find free venues, parks, and similar spaces, or take less of a cut, which really jeopardizes the ability for artists to stay in Houston, and that is of critical importance. Well, this is kind of leans a little bit into the marketing space, and I know that's outside of the scope of the organization, but we recognize that there's been significant efforts to brand Houston as a culinary capital of the South that has brought to light just the food and beverage scene. And there's kind of a desire that the same thing gets done for the culture sector. So whether that is folkloric arts or the arts community, the music scene, and really pay attention. So people tend to want to fund things that are exciting, and creating something that's really visible. So I mean, there could be conversations here about programming, and so I don't want to get into that. What might be an easy win or low-hanging fruit, this might not be an easy win, but we recognize that it seems like the mayor is not that much interested in arts pursuits, and there's a lack of dialogue that's happening between the mayor and arts organizations and the importance of that for the identity of Houston. So that could be something that we collectively could advocate for and achieve, better connection with the mayor's office, to ensure that there is a survival of the mayor's office of cultural affairs. And what solutions or asks would you like to see included in the HUARTS platform? Information on particularly how to feel safe to create art, work on psychological safety, especially in this political landscape that's very divisive. And in addition, also how to find safe spaces. We wanted to recognize that there's artists and audiences who are fearful at this moment, and they might be reticent to attend events, right? Given sort of what's happening with ICE and other issues sort of around the city. Tammy, Zachary, have I missed anything or anything that you would like to add?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. That was a very thorough feedback. The Black group, Rex, do you have anything?
Hi there. Not nearly as much as Joel, whose input I deeply appreciate. I will echo what he said about the mayor's office. We discussed briefly that it is it's rather frustrating that the level of communication is so small between the arts community and the mayor, particularly from his side, initiating any kind of dialogue. And we discussed the need for arts participants and producers in Houston to work together to raise awareness in his office that we are concerned about the situation, and that we would like strongly like to see the survival of initiatives and efforts that already exist in the mayor's office that support the arts. Regardless of how active they might be right now, it would be a shame to lose a committee that handles that specifically concentrates on cultural affairs, for example. I will say that one other thing that we did not quite get to talk about as much as I hoped was a suggestion that I saw in chat, global chat, about the ongoing revenue being collected from the Harris County Toll Road Authority, even after the debt has been retired for many of those roads. And I agree with the poster that would seem to be a ready source of at least some amount of money for the arts, since it isn't supposed to be a revenue stream that exists in the first place. But my guess is that the funds are already committed to other things that thought it would be a good place to find money also.
Thank you so much, Rex. So right now we're going to open up the room for any further questions anybody might have, or Isaac and Marcy, if you have anything else that you want to add, this is the time. Thank you.
Nothing in
One
particular.
thought, Isaac, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, peace. Yeah, I was just gonna add to the incredible work that Hugh Arts is doing. Is there any way that we can continue to champion this work? I know there were a group of us that met with our legislative councils, etc. Is there any letters that we could be writing? Is there any sort of tangible things we could keep in mind or top of mind as we move forward into the next in-person gathering?
It's a great question. I think that we definitely, I think the immediate next step should be follow up with the state level reps that had meetings, because there's some clear policy asks from TCA. And so Marcy's a little more connected to that, but I think getting a follow up template to reach out to your state representatives, because there were meetings and there were asks. So I think keep an eye out for that. We'll post, if anything happens, we'll send it out to the listserv and post on the Hugh Arts website. I think right now we don't yet have a firm enough set of asks or requests that we have templates to send to local or regional officials. But I think that could either happen in a reactive way, like if there is a threat in the funding perspectives that we talked about, we could have some like sort of emergency response outreach. And then as we finalize, we're basically going to spend the next month finalizing the platform and doing more trainings. And then we'll be really ready to say, here's your script, here's who you need to go reach with. But I think it's a great question, Rob, and something that we can kind of expedite is like, even if we're not 100% there, can we have an initial outreach that we say, here are some talking points if you happen to be able to reach a county or a local official?
Great,
Yeah, and
thank you.
I'll just add to that that's exactly the kind of thing that the objective is for this group to create. And also that one of the sort of low-hanging fruits that people can always be doing, because we're going to try and create a local arts advocacy day, and we have the state arts advocacy day, and there are these federal things that happen too, but those are just once every year, every 2 years. And so just making sure that there's continuous sharing with the people who represent you, the global you, everybody on the call who does arts and culture, just to say like, hey, I'm in your district and we have this really cool thing that's coming up. It would be great if you came. Just like making sure that the people who represent you are aware of the programs that you have going on and inviting them to come out to things, I think is just a way that people can just every once in a while touch base with the people that represent them and let them know about arts and culture that's happening in their districts.
Great, thank you, Marcy.
I see that Jeanette has a question.
Hi, it's more of a comment and then a question. I just want to, there was a couple of things that we did address. And one of the things that has been happening in the arts community, and this is and has been published in the Arts Journal, is that the art community is very insular and it's actually shrinking. So we are becoming more insular and becoming a vacuum. So in order for the arts to continue to grow and expand, we need to grow our audience and keep the public engaged. And as one of the non financial asks we spoke about in the group of like, and this also is coupled with the things that are happening in schools with arts being kind of taken out and put on the back seat of within the context of learning, is that perhaps, you know, extending like vouchers for Metro, like reaching out to the schools, to the art teachers there with, you know, programs that are happening that are city funded, partner with Metro, get vouchers to those students who want, you know, for their parents to take them to these events, and to continue to do outreach in modalities within the city, meaning city transportation, and schools. The other thing was based on developers again, and that's you know, the high cost of rent, right? The living costs of Houston is rising, to again incentivize bringing artists into those development apartments that are being developed with lower rents for artists who have been working in the community, maybe even particularly people who have received grants from the city of Houston to come into those buildings and those apartments at a lower rate. Thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment. I think those are really wonderful and great ideas, especially about the housing, because I know how expensive it could get with the rent and the housing costs here. One of the thing that I do want to mention is that I think it's great that we have these kind of collaborative session. But I realized most recently we have all these changes at a national and state and city level, and it is kind of sudden and that we find out about these things. And I know that things are not like finalized until they make it into a law, but is there any way we could have more like a real time or more frequent like information about what's really happening at a national and city level? Because I just feel like, you know, I find out about it after like the law has been already been in place and things have already changed. And then at that point, it's kind of difficult.
There's two things. One is thank you for asking the question. I think it's a good one. I found out last week that Texas Cultural Trust has an arts legislative tracker that they have on their website. So if you go to Texas Cultural Trust's website, you can follow all bills that impact the arts at the state level during this legislative session. They're watching it and posting it and updating those things on their website. It's Texas Cultural Trust. And then the other one is Americans for the Arts has the Arts Action Fund, and they do regular webinars about what's happening at the federal level. And they even have office hours every once in a while, quarterly, with the person who's the executive director of that organization. And they're usually really small. It's usually a group of 10 people or so from across the country. And she gives these one-on-one conversations about sort of what's happening in real time at the national level. Those are really great state and national resources. And also we'll make sure that eventually whenever we get this platform going and that kind of thing, we'll want to make sure that we connect everybody with those resources too. But that's a great question. And thank you to the people who posted that link in the chat.
Was it the National Endowment for the Arts that came and did a presentation at where they do the
Sandman Studios?
I think so, because he was going over how much budget the cities and the state has for like, because one of the conversations was that we're not being heard unless the word B is behind us. So unless we say that we're producing $1 billion worth of art sales or income that we're bringing into the state, that they don't want to listen. And so we actually exceeded that number according to what he said. But the one thing I thought was very interesting that I asked was why none of our rental income was included on the charts, because they were showing how much, money we brought in, supplies, tourism that we brought in, but no one was showing how much rent that artists were bringing in, not just for their studios, but if they didn't, what's your rents, what's your mortgages, and what's your, income in terms of real estate, because we're dealing with a real estate president, you know?
I think what you're talking about is when Randy Cohen came to present what Americans for the Arts' research was on the
Yes,
economic impact of arts and culture.
yes, that's it. But I
Yeah,
just
so
thought it was
and
interesting that the real estate wasn't included in any of it.
yeah, I think they track the same metrics over time with those studies. But yeah, there somebody added that link into that study too. And I'll add the Americans for the Arts Action Fund that has the regular federal postings.
Thank you.
We have also just added a link for the local study, the AAP6, that was just made in the past 5 years, and it includes Houston and the greater Houston area, just FYI. Okay, folks, well, we have a minute left. Please let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Stay in touch. You know where to find us. You can email us. You will receive an email from me in the next couple of days with kind of like a summary of what we talked about today and this really helpful links. I'll make sure to share this with you. If you have any questions, please, reach out. And then, yeah, thank you so much for your feedback and input, like Marcy has said. I hope you have a great evening, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Safe.